Today we are making a cheap and simple apple wine. The things you will need for this is apple juice. Make sure there's no preservatives in it. It should be pure apple juice. It can come from concentrate. It doesn't really matter. But make sure it is 100% pure apple juice. We'll need some sugar, and we will need some nutrients for the yeast. In this case I'm using raisins. I have went over them with a knife and some of them are a bit chopped up. You will need a spoon or a whisk if that is what you have or prefer. I prefer a spoon because there is one. You need a little spoon maybe. You will need some way to sanitize or sterilize your equipment. I'm using Starsan, but there are alternatives. For example, Saniclean, which is basically the same as Starsan, but it has a bit less bubbles. This is my sterilization bucket. This is the yeast I'm going to use. It's from a previous apple wine I made a while back. So this will be a second generation yeast, and hopefully it will work as well this time. You will need a pot or some type of container to have your tea in. I have prepared some hot water, about, well, approximately a liter, 1.5 liters. This will add tannin to your wine, which is a good thing in reasonable amounts. And there's a cat. Hopefully she won't come any closer. Not that I don't like her, but really it's not good to have a lot of cat hair in your product. You will need a hydrometer to gauge the sugar content of your must, so you know how much alcohol you can expect from the finished product. You'll need an airlock, which I'm going to sanitize because I haven't done that yet. And yeast. If you are using dry yeast like this, then you could rehydrate it in a cup of water. And you could also add some apple juice later and let it stand for a couple of hours and sort of get used to the juice in which it will live, thrive and ferment. But since I'm using a second generation yeast, I'm not going to use this. So I'm going to put it back in the fridge. I'm going to pour in the juice in the bucket. If I didn't mention that, you also need some sort of vessel. It could be a bucket like this, or it could be demijohn or damijohn or carboy or really whatever. There's lots of choices. So I'm going to pour in my apple juice into there after I sterilize my bucket. I have poured in most of the juice and I'm going to add sugar. I also took a reading, a hydrometer reading, and it was 38 or 1.038, which corresponds to an alcohol content of around 6.5% if we were to ferment it without any added sugar. I'm going to aim for something like 14%. So I will want the hydrometer to read about 104, 105, somewhere around there, or 1.1105, depending on how your hydrometer reads the scale on it. So I'm going to add the sugar, I'm going to add the last juice and the raisins and the tea. And everything is in except the raisins and the yeast. If you have had dry yeast and you have had it rehydrated and let it taste a bit of the apple juice and maybe some sugar, and you have let it stand for an hour, 2 hours, you can repeat the process to have it develop even more yeast. Now is the time to pour it in. The hydrometer is about 108. Yeah, it's not a chance that you will be able to see this, I think. Yeah, it's too much foam. About 108. So if it ferments to dryness, it should be around 15%. But this is nature, and sometimes it will stop at 14. It might go up to 16. Tomorrow I will stir it, and the day after that I will stir it again to break the build-up of yeast and to add some oxygen to it. Oxygen is very important to the yeast in the beginning, and it will be deadly in the end. So there's that. If this yeast did not work, I will give it 3 or 4 days, and then if nothing has happened by then, I will have to use the rest of the fruit schnapps yeast instead, but hopefully this will work. Alright, the total cost of this was like €25, and it is about 25 litres. So €1 per litre, which is fairly cheap. Where I live, it's ridiculously cheap. It'll take a few weeks, a couple of months, depending on how you will store it and which age you prefer to drink it, but it will still be very cheap. So, thank you. As you can see, the apple wine is bubbling away nicely. The old yeast didn't work, so I had to sprinkle some other yeast on top of the brew, the must. Now it's working. It's a pity. I really had hoped to be able to develop a generational yeast, but you can't always succeed.